y'all. Hope y'all are doing good. I'm out here on my back porch, and Ben asked me to do a song for y'all this week. This is called Universal Sound. Up in Pocahontas, in the cranberry glades, ain't got bars nor the charge to call her anyways. My mind's a mile a minute, and my thoughts they bark like hounds. I focus on my breathing in the universal sound. I think about my darling girl, sleeping all alone. I pray the stars will shoot her all the wishes she can hold. On the day that I return, well, I aim to lay her down. But right now I am focused on the universal sound. I think about tobacco juice and mason jars of shine. I think about the vices I've let take me over time. I recall when I was a baby, I didn't need nothing around but a little bitty rattle and the universal sound. I close my eyes, it was all so clear. It was all right then, and it's all right here. I focus on my breathing and the universal sound. I let it take me over from the toenails to the crown of the body that I'm in, till they put me in the ground. And I return to the chorus of the universal sound. I've been up on the mountain, I've seen his wondrous grace. I've sat there on the bar stool and I've looked him in the face. He seemed a little haggard, but it did not slow him down. He was humming to the neon and the universal sound.
All right, how about a hand for our own Mike Furlong, coming to us from Durham, North Carolina. Thanks, Mike. We love you. Appreciate it. So good to see you. Thanks for being with us and singing with us. I'm Ben. I'm the pastor of the church. I'll be your host for the service tonight here in the beautiful downtown DeLand and globally at wearecollectivechurch.com, where you can subscribe and stay connected. Whether you're in the room or online, you should subscribe to stay connected. That's through wearecollectivechurch.com. Kenny and I were talking this week. Hey guys, how's it going? Kenny and I were talking this week about this. We say every week we're broadcasting globally, and so in a sense, it's like, really, how globally? So we wanted to look into it. South Africa, New Zealand, the UK, Ireland, Canada, Sweden. How about the U.S., Kenny? What are we going on in the U.S.?
Virginia, West Virginia, Maine, New York, Utah, Washington, D.C., Colorado, Ohio, Arizona, Oregon, North Carolina, Georgia, Massachusetts, Michigan, and California.
And
Yeah.
and including, you guys probably, Florida? What do we got in Florida?
We've got Florida, we've got St. Augustine, Miami, Jacksonville, and of course all over Central Florida,
including, and you guys probably may or may not have heard of this, but the heartbeat of Volusia County. Recently we were voted America's best Main Street, beautiful, historic, downtown DeLand, Florida, even here. Yes, even here. We are, thank you, we're gathering safely in person, we're streaming, and respect your privacy, so if you don't want to be on the camera, you should sit over here, in person and online, live now or later on, whenever, wherever. Your presence makes us who we are. Liturgy means the work of the people, so not me doing a bunch of work, or us doing a bunch of work, but all of us working out our spiritual community together. Here to help us work tonight are liturgists. We've got Kenny, we also have Bill on deck. I believe Steve Tonjes is on his way.
He's right in
Steve
front
Tonjes
of
is here. Steve, do you want to go up there and get mic'd now, or do you want to wait until later in the service? What's easier? Cool, do that. We'll go right on. So our liturgists are with us. Artist in residence, Fred Wilson. Adding her voice, Melanie. So this week we've got the unrelated Wilsons. How about a hand for? All right, fantastic. And you all are here in the flesh, right? All those people all around the globe, but you're here. And you're really here, Jess. You're here, finally. The point is we all are collective church. So our community statement reminds us what that means. Let's check that out.
We value highly the metaphor of journey.
We're different people from different places and backgrounds.
Representing a multi-generational community, and we travel different paths.
So we agree not to make assumptions about the person across from us.
Next to us.
Or in conversation with us.
We challenge ourselves to be sensitive.
Knowing this community includes a diverse group of people.
From lifelong followers of Jesus
To people who are just now open to the idea that God might exist.
We strive to avoid offense.
Ask good questions.
articulate and explain our responses.
We don't assume fluency in the Bible.
Spirituality or church language.
Because we believe the message of Jesus is not for Christianity, but for humanity.
So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
We do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
In the spirit of love and grace.
Everything in the spirit of love
and grace.
So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts is watching when people in the room see themselves or someone near them in the Dan Hensley hat. Everybody on the couch turns and looks at Dan, like the classic Dan Hensley shot. So we are a collective church. We, those of us in the room, we, those of us online. Brandon, would you give us a shot of the room? We can wave at everybody. Hey, online, this is us. Cameras from right there. Hey, and Kenny, tell us who's online. Who's with us tonight that's joining us?
Karen and Lewis Long are watching along with us.
Hey, Lewis and Karen, good to see you guys.
Sharon is also watching.
Awesome, very cool. Hey, Sharon.
But we do have more eyes on the stream than we have names in the chat. So
cool.
If you want to get your voice heard, please chat along with me.
Awesome, very cool. Thanks, Kenny. Hey, everybody online, if you want to chat, we're going to try something new this week. We're going to incorporate conversation during the service, which we haven't done in a while. I don't know that we've successfully done it since we've been in the room, but if you're online and you want to chat, Kenny's going to get his chat fingers fired up here in a little bit. But get on the Facebook chat so that you can contribute to the conversation in a minute. So we are collective. Now join us. We're going to sing that together. Love Without Why. This is our community statement song.
Different paths, beautiful people with messy pasts, so have no fear, no judgment here, whether you believe in Jesus or don't believe in anything. There's something you can teach us. You belong, no right, no wrong. You are held in light. Good news is on your mystery. The solidarity helps us to find some peace in the great unknown. You don't have to be alone. Leaning into grace, help us make a place with an open table. No one's turned away. We'll love without why. No one asks to why. Finding God in people, sharing hearts as equals. For you are held in light. Good news is on your side. Whoa.
Thanks, Freddie. Thanks, Melanie. And thank you, guys. I can't tell if you're singing because you have masks on, so I'm just going to assume, because it makes me like you more, and the energy, I assume behind your masks you're all just belting it out. So we've said it, we've sung it. Kenny, how do we practice together this week? How do we practice the community statement together as a community?
Practice starts with your email. If you haven't, go ahead and subscribe to the email and check the box for the rundown. Check your preferences and then select rundown, then which groups you want within the rundown. Customize your dashboard for how you want to hear from us and in turn practice with us. Ben had a bit of fun with Jay last week, and thanks for being a good sport. We've seen him this week.
Yeah, we raked Jay over the coals pretty hard last week, and I don't know that we ever determined what the cause was of his not getting the stuff he wanted in the rundown. But I think the takeaway was the same as always, which is you should get the rundown and select your preferences.
In this case, the person who can help you and get things done is me. I'm Kenny. I can help you right after the service at the bar, and then you'll see as much or as little as you want of us and our weekly practice menu in your inbox. We need your help also. All hands on deck. We have the following volunteer opportunities coming soon. So baristas, liturgists, setup and events crew, cleanup crew, collective kids, greeters, collective carpool, and then on top of that, we've got upcoming work days that will include painting, flooring, cleaning, and organization. We have volunteer teams meetings this coming up Wednesday, so check the volunteer box and come help. And the first Art and Soul event is live on Facebook now. But you need more than just a regular RSVP for this one. You need a free ticket, which is linked in the event, to reserve your spot. It's very intuitive. If you are on your computer, the event shows both a Find Tickets button, and then it has the link on the details. On your phone, just click Tickets, and you'll get there. All you have to do once you're on the ticket page is decide whether you want to be there in person or virtually. Getting your ticket means we can accurately plan materials for those really planning on coming. I think there's a cutoff date. Is it like a few days before the event? So I would, if you're interested in coming, make sure that you get those tickets reserved. Remember that the point is the practice. You can't make time. You can only choose how you spend it. Make your plan to practice with us this week. Get the rundown, check the boxes. Your presence makes us who we are.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kenny. This is Steve. Steve, are you mic'd yet?
Pardon?
Are you mic'd?
No.
The mic's right there.
Freddie's going to help you get mic'd up.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No apologies. This is how we do it. This is how the sausage gets made. Steve gets mic'd up during the service. So Steve's going to share in just a second. Actually, I'll give him an intro, and then he can sort of share a little bit more. He realized, and this is one of the things that I love about Collective, we stretch as far as we can to include, especially those who have not been included. And I love that Steve's ears are tuned, because what he's been hearing a ton, especially in the last month since we've been open, is subscribe to the email, get the rundown. If you guys haven't gotten that in the last, so you've got to do that if you want to stay connected. So Steve's ears are tuned to go, what about people without email? So Steve is going to be our point of contact for non-email congregants. Steve would love to help you understand how to be involved in things, when things are happening, and he wants to create a way to communicate with people who can't get the email for whatever reason, or you don't use email. So this is Steve. You want to add anything to that, Steve?
Just let Kenny or you know, I suppose, and
yes.
Then we can get together and share however we're going to communicate.
Yeah, if that's, our recurring joke was, how should we let Steve know? We'll send him an email, but we don't, yeah. So we're going to be, in a sense, we're going to go backwards as innovators and ask, how do we include everyone, even people who are not necessarily on the cutting edge of some of the ways that we're communicating. So thanks for that sensitivity, Steve, and for being willing to be the point person. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's see here. Work. Oh, right, Bill. So Bill is going to lead us in to a bit of silence. So we've talked a lot about practice, right? And that's sort of come in and remind ourselves that what we're doing is not just getting together for an hour, but that we're sort of reminding ourselves that it's very important for us to also practice individually and as people during the week. So we're going to practice. Bill is going to lead us into silence, and I think what we're going to do, I've asked him to lead us in what I affectionately call the disappearing mantra. So he does this backwards, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know, be still. So he's going to do that. Once he gets to the end of that, I'm going to ring the singing bowl, and we're going to sit silently for about 3 minutes, and then Bill and I are going to come back and talk a little bit about silence. That's our topic for tonight. So, Bill, would you lead us in? I guess I'll give you the usual stuff. If you're with us in person, you can go ahead and just sort of get a little more comfortable. Make sure you're sitting straight up. If you can get your feet on the floor. If you're not in a high top, you can do that. If you're online, we've got a great meditation aid from 3-Button Media. We've got great drone footage. Also check those out. 3-Button publishes the Sunday Slowdown with some great meditation stuff. So let's take a cleansing breath. And then Bill, why don't you lead us in? And we'll, at the end of it, we'll sit silently together for about 3 minutes.
Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be.
out of our time of silence. Do so gently. We're talking tonight. It's down here. That's right. Like, how come I can't? I was way into that silence. So I asked Bill to come, and we were talking leading up to this evening about how to do this, because it's tough. We've been talking for 3 weeks about how we practice neighborhood. And the first week, we talked about practicing time. And then last week, we talked about how we practice with food, and really our posture towards time, posture towards food. And tonight, our posture towards silence. And what I realize is I don't think there's a right way to do this. So I've got a few different ways, and I'm going to trust that you guys will grab and engage with what works for you, and we've got some opportunity to practice. So I asked Bill to share this quote with us, and then I've got a specific question for him. So let's throw that Thomas Merton quote up on the screen. Bill, you want to read that for us?
When we have really met and known the world in silence, words do not separate us from the world, nor from other men, nor from God, nor from ourselves, because we no longer trust entirely in language to contain reality.
That's got a lot in there. There's a ton in there. So in terms of how, let's hone in because we can't cover everything. In terms of how we could practice silence as a means of cultivating neighborhood, neighborliness, kindness. We've been specifically using the language of we ourselves doing the work of moving past selfishness to selflessness, and then we as a group moving past tribalism to what we would call humanism or globalism, but basically the idea that there's a bigger neighborhood than our neighborhood, that there's sort of a global neighborhood. So, Bill, one of the things that we're trying to wrestle with tonight, which is, there's not going to be a TED Talk or a sermon that's going to make sense of this and explain it. We can talk a little bit about data, but at the end of the day, it's the experience of silence that really changes people, that does this to people. So, Bill, what's your experience with how the practice of silence opens us up to sort of move beyond our selfishness, and then also could open us up to move beyond our tribalism?
Well, I'll share how I enjoy silence, because I really enjoy it. First thing in the morning when I get up.
Are you willing to pull your mask down just while you're talking?
Absolutely.
Awesome. That would help for us online especially.
First thing in the morning when I get up, I love silence. I don't turn on the radio. I don't turn on TV. Absolute silence for the first hour. I'm walking the dogs. I'm cleaning the cat litter. You can find God in cat litter, believe it or not.
Yeah, well. There's so many jokes I want to make on that. Yeah, people have been doing it for generations. Yeah.
I have a mentor who said, Bill, if you can't find God in the subway, don't go on retreat. He won't show up.
Yeah.
So for me, silence is full. It's rich. It used to be empty and hollow, but now it's rich.
Yeah.
And I came to realize that in my practice and in my life, we live in an addicted society. It's not just addicts. The whole society is addicted. The legal system, the religious system, the educational, it's all addicted. What addiction does is cut you off from yourself. And if I'm cut off from me, I'm cut off from God. And if I'm like a talking head.
Yeah.
When you were a kid, there was a thing on, or you were all kids, most of you were kids, on Saturday Night Live, Max Headroom. And all you saw was his head. And there was a reason for that, because it was a mirror society. So when you're cut off from God, you're cut off from yourself, you're cut off from other people. So it's easy to hate that group over there.
Yeah.
So for me, we got a detox. And I used to work in a detox many, many years ago. And we'd give Librium. I don't know if they give that anymore. And then you titrate off the Librium, and you're back to balance, homeostasis. Yeah. Well, for us, silence, I think, is the antidote for all this crazy, addictive, conspiratorial, crazy thinking that we hear about, and we may even think ourselves.
Yeah. So that's amazing. I'm not even sure, and I'll be honest, I practice with Bill, and I've been doing this a long time. I still don't know entirely how all this stuff works, but I want you to hear what Bill just said. the answer to my question about how does silence help us practice ways of connection, he said, for most of us, I think, when we come to silence, silence is a little bit threatening because we understand it to be isolation. We understand it to be disconnection. But if we turn the noise off, then we're all alone. What Bill is saying is that there's a way to be silent that is actually a practice of connection, that opens you even more to a sense of connection with people around you, to God, and just to listening. We're going to talk a lot about listening, but amazing. Thank you, Bill. So that's the question of the evening is how do we practice silence? And obviously we practice it every weekend here. But how do we practice it with an eye on the outcome, right? Because what's the awesome outcome here? That Collective is famous, or that Christianity gets really famous, or that a bunch of people get to make money? No. The point is that people would change and that the world would become a better place. But that requires, and this is the part that most people don't like, that requires us to change. And that's the point of the practicing community, is that we understand that the change has to start with us. And so here's where I want to start, because I think this is, we won't go into it a ton, but this was just, actually Jay shared this with me this week. This is where the other research and the data that I've come across all points in the same direction, but this quote really summarized it the best. So this is a quote from Sherry Turkle. I wanted to raise an empathic child, and I knew that without the ability to spend quiet time alone, that would be impossible. So she's already got me, right? I've got a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, so she's got me. The capacity for solitude without stimulation is where the capacity for empathy is born. The capacity for solitude without stimulation is where the capacity for empathy is born, to be in someone else's shoes. We can't relate to others until we're comfortable with ourselves. That's a problem, because I'm not comfortable with myself. Are you guys all comfortable with yourselves? The eyes all dart away. That's a psychoanalytic first principle. If you don't teach your children to be alone, they'll only know how to be lonely. Maybe silence, I was thinking about this, maybe silence for us is a spiritual practice that is like anti-venom, right? I had a good friend, we played Little League, and we played at Flutie Field down in Melbourne Beach, Florida, Doug Flutie Field. There was I think 8 baseball diamonds, and he left in the middle of a t-ball game and ran out past the fields to go pee. And he was peeing in the palmettos, and he stepped on a pygmy rattlesnake, and it bit him 3 times real quick, and then he ran all the way back across. And he was dead when he got to the hospital. Luckily, they saved him, but his leg was like purple, and it was like this big. Maybe silence is not, isn't the magic pill as much as it is the antidote. It's only, this seems to be what Sherry Turkle's saying, it's only by introducing aloneness that we can be inoculated from loneliness. Which it seems counterintuitive, right? That you would put the venom of the snake in to heal the venom. But part of what Bill is saying is that there's a switch that flips in the practice of sitting in silence, where silence is no longer the source of separation, but the source of connection. And our whole vision, like we just said, our whole vision is moving from me to we, and we to everybody. Can I move out of my selfishness to become more selfless? Can we move out of our tribalism to acknowledge a larger neighborhood than even as great as our tribe is? And we think it's great. Me to we to everybody. And we call this process, we call this behavior spirituality. This is our practicing community. This is the school of love. Silence, and this is across the research that I've been able to find, this is what Sherry Turkle summarizes really well. Silence is directly linked to empathy. If you can't be silent, it's really, really hard to develop empathy. Which is interesting. So if you look at the predominant vehicle of Christian development and communication and growth, it's really quite a bit of noise. And I think that's a reflection of the culture, right? We live in a culture with a lot of noise. If we can't be silent, if we can't develop empathy, the empathy needed to move past myself and past my tribe, silence is essential. What we're saying is silence is essential for conversation. And part of what we're also acknowledging then is that spirituality is a conversation. Spirituality is a conversation which is not only noise. I mean, if you think about some of the greatest conversations you've been in, were they nonstop? Were you both just talking the whole time? Or were there moments where one of you said something, the other one said something, you were just stunned, and you both had to process it, and so you sat in silence in the rhythm of our speech, and there's silence in the way that we listen. Let's invite a biblical voice into this, and I didn't mean that pejoratively, Steve, but Steve's going to read for us, hopefully, this text from the Shema, which should sound familiar. Go for it, Steve, whenever you're ready. Can you read it from there?
Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates.
Thanks, Steve. If that sounded familiar, the 6 weeks leading up to Easter are called the season of Lent, and we did that reading every week for 6 weeks. It's called the Shema, and we talked for 6 weeks about listening, which is directly connected to silence. Israel, the people connected to that reading, Israel is a listening people. And I read this great commentary this week that said, when they cease to listen, they cease to be Israel. What a powerful way to think of the constitution of a community, that their beingness as a community is connected to the activity of listening. What if Collective was a listening people who, when we did not listen, ceased to be Collective? I think that if I can acknowledge my shortcomings and my failures, I think that is true, and that some of our hardest days have been that hard lesson, you know? And I'm the one leading, so it's when I stop listening, we stop listening. What does it mean for us as a community to continue to be listening people? The point is that listening puts you in a receptive mode. It's not just the absence of sound, but it's the posture towards silence, right? And I get this a ton in my recovery community, in recovery from alcohol. There's a huge difference between me not drinking and me working my program. Right? The world is full of dry drunks who are stubborn enough not to take a drink. That's not the same as working my program, as doing the steps, and it's the same with listening. You can will yourself. Listen, my kids are stubborn enough that they can win the quiet game, right? I'm stubborn enough that I can shut my mouth if I have to. That's not precisely what we're talking about. There's an invitation to a posture towards silence, and I think that is what changes our sense of self and other and tribe and other. Now, historically, and I'm really grateful Steve was willing to come, historically, the Quakers have created this amazing culture where time and silence and welcome are embodied in their communal experience. And I'm sure it's in their writing. I'm sure it's in their literature. I'm sure I could find it on a website somewhere. But more importantly, it's embodied in their shared experience. Something about the way they practice manifests a different relationship with time and silence. I want to say this. Feel free to correct me, Steve, because I'm an aspiring Quaker, I guess. I should say that. I'm not identifying as, I'm an aspiring Quaker. To my best understanding of this community and this practice, they create this different relationship with time and silence by doing 4 simple things. Opening a space for quiet time, to be together, and to welcome everybody. 4 things. Space, quiet time, be together, welcome everybody. Isn't that an insanely simple but like really, really good recipe? Like if you guys have ever had like really simple cookies or really simple ice cream where there's only like 3 or 4 ingredients, and unlike so many things in our world, it actually tastes like what it is. I think that's what the Quakers have done in a really amazing way. especially when you realize that things in and of themselves are not the point, but they combine to build a community with characteristics that primarily evoke peace. That's what Quakers are known for, that their community evokes peace. And I want to say we can get confused, and we can go, okay, so they're practicing silence, and the outcome is that they're these peaceful people. I want to be clear that what we're looking for are not peaceful individuals within a community that happens to practice Quaker silence. We're actually talking about, because these people practice silence, that community calls forth peace. Those are different things. It's not a bunch of naturally, individually peaceful people that got together and go, oh, look, it just so happens that all of our friends happen to be the peaceful people in town. So luckily we all got together and we sit peacefully in silence. No. They get together and they practice silence because they know that that kind of community calls forth peace. Where does it call that from? Out of the silence. Out of the silence. Their call for peace, the justice word, comes out of the practice of silence and togetherness and listening. Steve is with us. Steve is a longtime collective member and active member of the DeLand Quaker meeting. Steve, tell us about the way that you've experienced silence together, building community and belonging. Not just within that particular Quaker meeting, but in the rest of your life. How has Quaker silence helped you to kind of move beyond the self and move beyond that tribe?
Well, our first experience with Quakers, I'm what they call a convinced Quaker as opposed to a birthright Quaker.
Ooh, okay. I like that.
We walked into a meeting of people that we had never met and sat in silence with them for an hour. And we were amazed at how, not so much, I used to say that we felt like we knew them, but it was more like we felt like we were accepted and belonged. I'm not sure that the Quakers, I don't see, and the other Quakers who are in the room can correct me, who are longer-term Quakers than I, but I don't see a lot of emphasis per se on the silence. The silence is making space, as you said, for God to speak. And that is not so much practicing the silence as listening for God.
Yeah, thank you. That's an important distinction. Maybe the difference between silence for silence's sake versus silence as in anticipation of something else. That it's not, the silence is not the practice in and of itself. I love that it's making space. And that the activity you're primarily being asked to engage in is to listen.
It occurred to me as you were talking that the reason we felt accepted, I think, is that when we talk with other people, we're always presenting our best self and not our whole self. And it's not like you get facts in silence, but you get some deeper sense of belonging.
A non-verbal presence. Wow. Yeah, and you said, your first inclination that you walked into this room with people you didn't know, nothing was said, and what was communicated to you was acceptance and belonging.
And we stayed with that meeting for many years.
I'm not crazy, right? Like, we've been talking about this for 7 years. Like, how do we help people know that they're accepted? How do we help them know that they belong? Acceptance and belonging. And trust me, I'll say words about it. That's what I do. I'll talk about it all day long for 7 years. And we can create spaces where people can simply have that communicated to them apart from anything other than the space. What a gift. So, Steve, how can we practice this? We are, Collective is combining forces with the DeLand Quakers, and we're basically using our social media platform and communication tools to point people towards this existing really good opportunity to sit in silence with people who have some history with sitting in silence. So, Steve, where do we come, and what should we expect if we want to come to the Be Quiet, which is joining the DeLand Quaker meeting?
Well, the DeLand Quakers are a new group.
Okay.
Actually, technically, we are a worship group, and the Quakers have various administrative or just boxes that we put each other in. Eventually, we may be a preparative meeting. We are under the care of a meeting, a well-established meeting in Orlando.
Okay.
The Orlando Friends meeting. You and I think, were thinking that we might say, okay, let's start going to Quaker meetings. But we had our first meeting in this space this morning. And I think we are still trying to figure out what we want, where we are, and how we are going to welcome people who have not experienced Quakers before. So we will be meeting, and if you just can't wait, we aren't going to kick you out the door, but we are meeting at 10 o'clock in this space for silent worship. As I said, we are still trying to figure out exactly where we are going because we have been homeless until now. And I think probably, I don't think I'm really in a position to offer an invitation to come and join our meeting because I'm not sure exactly what our meeting, we're not sure exactly what our meeting is.
Right.
But it's here. If you would like to come, we'll welcome you as best we can.
Sure.
Until we kind of get ourselves established.
Well, we appreciate that. We certainly don't want to put undue pressure, and I think if there's any community that understands what it means to be in transition and process and not know who you are or how you're doing things, that's definitely us. But I hope that you guys at least understand, and those who are watching online, that our part of our intention, and really part of what's super native to Collective is both with the content that I present and with the community network is to curate really good stuff that's already there, right? There's not enough hours in the day that this could all be original. So I'm trying to find the best of what's out there and bring that to you guys so that we can practice better together. And I want you to know we're doing the same thing by looking around town and going, hey, is it smart for us to create an entirely separate practice group that's primarily going to be around silent worship or quiet or whatever for another hour on another night of the week with some of the same people? Or do we acknowledge there's already something really good going on? And for the handful of us who are probably really interested in that, rather than reinventing the wheel, let's combine forces with things that are already doing really good. And hey, we happen to have space and they need it. Bill.
I don't know if anybody knows, but if it wasn't for the Quakers, we would probably still have slavery in this world to a greater extent than we do now. Over 100 years before they dismantled it in this country, John Woolman, the founder of Quakerism, started the dismantling of slavery in England. There's any true mysticism is connected with some form of social justice.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if I could just share a couple things about ways of, how do we practice this?
Sure, yeah, come on.
The trees in my backyard, there's like 25 yards of preserve that nobody can build on. So I can't see our neighbors. Our neighbors are the trees and the birds and the crickets. And I call them sentinels of stillness. Just gaze at a tree and just notice how still it is. And eventually you're going to get in touch with the stillness that's already in here. That's your true self. That's just a way. Plants, butterflies, crickets, any animal will put you in touch with this silent stillness. Words that come out of silence. The writings of Thomas Merton, the writings of any mystic. I don't read about dysfunction, psychological dysfunction anymore. I study self-actualized people, mystics. And if you read their words come out of silence. They'll draw you into silence. Eckhart Tolle is one, no matter where you're coming from. Stillness speaks. You could be coming from any place. You can be an atheist and get something out of this. It's not about religion. Wellsprings of life. These are Quaker words put in chant form by Paulette Meyer. Beautiful stuff. And lastly, listen to silence. And if the silence is punctured by noise, just notice the silence that the noise is in.
I want you guys to know, and I want to admit, I'm not only because I'm young, but also just because a lot of this practice is new to me. I want you to know that we have resources, that there are people within our community who are practicing this. So if you've got questions, come to me, come to them. And I think maybe more than anything, what I'm wanting, and I had this realization this weekend because I got really, really frustrated at myself. And I kept trying to put it on other people because I didn't want it to be me. I wanted to blame somebody else. And where it landed again was, if I want things to be different, I've got to do things differently. And I wonder how many of us keep showing up here every Sunday just going, man, things are perfect, and I'm content, and if things would just keep going the way they are, things would be fantastic. I think we're here because we know that there are ways that we can practice that will make our lives better, that will make our human relationships better, that will make the world a better place. And I'm grateful. Thank you guys for being willing to share. I think I'm more convinced than I've ever been that silence is an essential part of any practice that's going to lead to compassionate community building, compassionate justice, all that kind of stuff. So the practice of listening, it brings us together, and one of the other things it does is remind us that we're not alone. We talked about food last week, and we said soul food doesn't just say you're going to die young if you keep eating casserole. Soul food says you're in a place where you belong. And I think that's so importantly one of the things that Steve shared. Silence and listening, and they are, and I don't know, I mean, this is back to like woo-woo, airy-fairy religious language. I don't have any theology or precision metaphysically to say this other than silence is a form of embrace. If you can be quiet, I mean, you talk about sitting Shiva after somebody's died, you talk about a friend helping you work through something, silence is absolutely a form of embrace. Maybe it's the feeling of belonging or the feeling of being included. And one of the ways that Collective has done this historically really well is the awareness that questions create those environments for silence, for vulnerability, not questions of data and not questions of opinion, but questions of personal experience. Not let's have a debate about what we think about whatever, but questions of experience. When you ask a question that's an invitation to hear each other, something is created. There's a space that's created, a vulnerability, a sacredness. You get this around dinner tables. And I think the Quakers understand this. I think they've been gathering around that space that's created for a long, long time. And they've known well enough how to preserve it to keep the boundaries of silence around so that listening can happen and so that the voice of God can emerge. But with questions, let's do this experiment. If you guys want to chat, if you're online, you can chat to Kenny. Here, I want to put up 4 questions, and here's the problem. You only get to answer one, and I'm going to make you sit in silence for 2 minutes before you say anything. What happens for you in silence alone, with others? And then what's life-giving or what's a challenge? And again, these are not questions that have a right or wrong answer. We're not saying that Steve and Bill and Dan and Susan and the people with a lot of experience sitting in silence, whether meditation or Quaker worship, this isn't a hierarchy. There's not anything in this room that says better or worse. We're asking you to share your experience. So let's sit in silence for about 90 seconds, and then I'm going to let you guys kind of share house rules around here, and then I'm going to let the people online share to Kenny, and then he can chat back with us in just a second. But let's sit with that question. And one of the things I want you to pay attention to is whether or not what you think you want to say in 90 seconds is exactly what you wanted to say when you first saw the question. So let's sit silently for about 90 seconds. All right. Actually, I think we've got an intimate enough group we can share. Who wants to share? Yeah, Ashley. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Good, thank you. Oh, man. Mm. So where do you do that? Like running, exercising, what kind of? Okay. Supposed to doesn't belong here. Supposed to doesn't belong here. Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But you practice. Fantastic. Awesome. Who else? How does silence work for you or not work for you? Jess and then Dan. Ooh, good one. So Jess said she has migraines a lot, and exercise helps to deal with the migraines. And so for her, silence is the experience of getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah, absolutely. Dan. Yeah. 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 That is amazing. That's awesome. I'm sitting here thinking, this is my, this is why I don't do silence very well. I'm sitting here thinking, if we had Dan write that down as like a religious text, and then like 3,000 years from now, you've got these people going, we've got to empty the trash can, like develop these rituals. But that you guys are practicing. That's what I want you to know is that this is already happening. You guys have stuff, and it's not, I promise, it's not something I ever told you to do from up here because I haven't. And yet, it's working. You guys are developing the practice. You understand the point of it. Kenny, anybody online have anything they want to share?
We've got a really good mix of answers in the chat, and actually, I got something from Peter Saraceno.
Oh, cool. Hey, Peter, how's it going, man?
He says, what happens to him in silence alone is a feeling of expansiveness that he first identified as the presence of God. But as he began to rethink it, he started to just feel expansiveness, almost as if it was getting in tune with what was really going on.
Man, that's great. Fantastic. Thanks, Peter.
And we've got Dottie.
Hey, Dottie.
She says, when she sits silently with others for a goodly time, her chest feels with the voices and presences of people she's lost, her elders.
Yeah.
Tracy Lundquist says, it is life-giving to reach a depth of relationship with another person that they and I can sit together in total comfortable silence.
Yeah.
And Karen Long says, it's a sense of freedom, a sensation of connection, a sense of renewal, how to keep from losing these things. Oh, and that's actually Lewis.
Oh,
yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Lewis. You guys are practicing. I want to encourage you. You can do this. You're already doing it. And I think one of the greatest things for me is that there's not an answer to a question like this, because when you bring an open-ended question, when you create space for silence, and I think maybe this is the way to say what Bill was saying. And I guess it's both, because in a sense, maybe Steve's point. The point is not to silence the thing. The point is to create the clearing for something to happen. And then at the same time, Bill says it's not emptiness, it's fullness. And we don't need to reconcile that, because we're talking about our engagement with the silence that shapes us, not who's right about it. Anything, and so it can be a question, it can be intentional silence, it can be the moment that happens in a relationship where, and you guys both know it, maybe you don't make eye contact, maybe you do, but a conversation hits a point where the small talk is over, and it's like somebody downshifts, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, now we're getting into the real stuff, and even if it's not sitting in silence on purpose, you know what I'm talking about. There's a sense of depth to the space in between your words that's heavier than it was. And so good questions are a sacrament of silence. Everything you guys have just listed, what you've shared, as mystical and intentional or as like silly as they are, they're real. They're sacramental. And so I want to invite you guys, if you don't already have it, come up with something this week, a practice. Make a commitment, and don't commit to me, and if you want, commit to the people around you, but make a commitment to yourself to find out what silence does. Right? N equals 1. Let's do an experiment. What does silence do to you this week? All right, let's close with this. It's time. Ecclesiastes 5:1. We're going to close with the wisdom. This is the master wisdom writer. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Go near to listen, rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools who do not know what they do wrong. So the sacrifice of fools, let me fill you in. This is a Jewish way of saying running their mouths. So the sacrifice of fools, let me give you just a few examples. Proverbs 17, even fools who are thought wise, when they keep silent, their mouths shut, they seem intelligent. Proverbs 29, a fool lets fly with all his temper, but a wise person keeps it back. And then Proverbs 10, transgression is at work where people talk too much, but anyone who holds his tongue is prudent. The writer of Ecclesiastes is saying the sacrifice of fools is running your mouth. And in case we didn't catch it, this is how he lands it. Don't be quick to run your mouth. Do not be hasty, and I love it. I love it. And this is back to what Ashley was saying, what Bill was saying. He's talking about your mouth, he's talking about your capacity to listen for silence, but then he immediately goes to heart, right? Your running your mouth is not a mouth problem, is it? It's a heart problem. Don't be quick to run your mouth. Do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. I want to be clear that he's not saying don't utter anything before God, because that would fly in the face of all of Israel's worship, right? They're always offering sacrifices before God. I wonder if this is not the cosmic don't speak until spoken to. I wonder if this is the cosmic invitation to Quaker silence. Don't utter anything before God speaks. You sit in silence and you keep your mouth shut until you hear something from God. And I think that's one of the things I love most about Quaker silence is the humility. I mean, how great a filter is that you're going to sit in silence with a bunch of other people, and the only time you're going to open your mouth is when you're bold enough to say that you think you've heard something from God that's worth sharing with that group of people. I mean, you got to have some ego to do that, and like good, healthy ego, that's fine, but what a humbling filter. And that's what we're doing in silence, is we're going, all of the BS that I could say, every thought that crosses my mind, every worry, every concern, doesn't need to be externalized. It can all be acknowledged, it can pass, we can find that place of compassion and empathy. And then God is in heaven and you are on earth. This is a Jewish way of saying, remember you're small, right? God is in heaven and you are on earth. This is why I go to the mountain, right? Because I need to feel small in a good way. I need to be reminded of the size that I actually am. And the result is this: so let your words be few. Remember how small you are, and let your words be few. And this transitions right into next week. We start next week an entire month on wonder, and we're going to start with the cosmos. We're going to start with how small we are. It's going to be amazing. Dan's going to share some stuff with us. There's something that happens when we get together and we speak and we listen, and we slow down, and we learn to wait for the deep stuff to emerge. That's tough. That's a tough sell in our culture because you can't rush it. It's like one of the few things that's absolutely true and good and valuable, and it just can't be rushed. The only thing that's going to program us for that kind of compassion is practicing sitting in silence. In just a minute, we're going to come to this table and receive the Eucharist. This is a symbol for us and for our tradition of the materiality of our faith and the humanity of God. It's a reminder that we ourselves are the body of Christ, and that one of the ways we are the body of Christ is by practicing silence together. The table of this unconditional belonging and transformative love is set. It is open to us and to all people, and as always, no one will ever be turned away. We're going to begin. I'm going to invite you guys into silence in just a second, and then we're going to come to the table out of silence. And Freddie and I will wait to start playing and singing until you all start to come up, so that we can just kind of settle in. And let's maybe do it this way. Let's treat it a little bit in the style of a Quaker silence, where you all sit until you feel like it's time for you to go. And I'm not going to say like you need to hear an audible voice, or I'm going to come around and tap you on the shoulder. You know what it means. I'm just saying sit long enough until you feel like you've sat long enough. And then come up, and I'm going to coach through because I've done this poorly 4 weeks in a row. So you're going to come up. And I didn't unthaw the amazing fresh bread from Dan. Apologies, Dan. So we'll be back to fresh bread next week, but we have sacraments here. We've got a little juice in here and a little biscuit up there. There are a bowl of gluten-free ones if you need that. There's only a handful, though, so don't take them if you don't need them. And the thought is you're going to come up and you receive your Eucharist, and then just come over and stand here. And when the next person comes up and receives theirs, you just say to them, bread for the journey and nourishment for the soul. And then they're going to come over and do the same thing, so that nobody takes the Eucharist, but we can all receive it from this community. Let's sit together in silence, and whenever you all are ready, feel free to come and receive. Be quiet together.
don't quite know how to say how I feel. Those three words are said too much, but not enough. If I lay here, if I just lay here, would you lie with me and just forget the world? Forget when we're told before we get too old. Show me a garden that's bursting into light. Let's waste time chasing cars around our heads. I need your grace to remind me to find my own. If I lay here, if I just lay here, would you lie with me and just forget the world? Forget when we're told before we get too old. Show me a garden that's bursting into light. All I am, all that I ever was here in your perfect eyes. They're all I can see. I don't know where, confused about how as well. Just know that these things will never change for us at all. If I lay here, if I just lay here, would you lie with me and just forget the world?
Thank you guys for joining us in person and online. Though this service and this community are a gift and a calling, they are not by accident, and they are not free. Good work requires attention and resources, so part of our practice is to support Collective financially and to stay connected. Please don't leave without giving back. You can do that at collectivegives.com. Kenny?
And make your plan to stay connected at wearecollectivechurch.com. Update your preferences and customize your engagement. Our benediction this evening is Such Silence by Mary Oliver. As deep as I ever went into the forest, I came upon an old stone bench, very, very old, and around it a clearing, and beyond that, trees taller and older than I had ever seen. Such silence. It really wasn't so far from a town, but it seemed all the clocks in the world had stopped counting. So it was hard to suppose the usual rules applied. Sometimes there's only a hint, a possibility. What's magical sometimes has deeper roots than reason. I hope everyone knows that. I sat on the bench, waiting for something. An angel, perhaps, or dancers with the legs of goats. No, I didn't see either, but only, I think, because I didn't stay long enough.
Mary Oliver, patron saint of collect. Thanks, Kenny. Let's bring our hands together as a symbol of our intention. First, to our foreheads for clarity of thought, to our lips for clarity of speech, to our hearts for clarity of action, so that all that we say and do, again, first, with clarity of heart, clarity of speech, clarity of action. Grace and peace. All right, y'all have a great evening. Thanks, Melanie. Thanks, Fred. Thanks to our liturgists. Thanks, everybody online. Appreciate it.